What event in your life still fucks with you to this day? When I was a child, I received an invitation to a birthday party. It was handwritten and given to me by the kid whose birthday it was. When I got there, he pretended not to remember inviting me and asked to see the invitation. He denied writing it in front of many of my classmates, and said I invited myself. I was so upset that I wanted to leave immediately, but my mom had already left. So, I explained what happened to his mom so she could maybe drop me off. Luckily, his mom recognized his handwriting and was clearly angry at her son for being a bully, so she gave some lamingtons and a soda, and told me I could go play video games by myself until my mom picked me up. That was the day I discovered that none of my classmates were my friends. I went quadding with a man on our second date. On the ride home, after an awesome day exploring the mountain, he lost control of the quad, and we went off the logging road into the trees. A tree fell on my leg, pinning me down. My date, who took a tree to his skull, fell backwards onto me. I was unable to move my entire body, trapped under a man I believed to be deceased. We were hidden in the forest of a low-traffic logging road and my cell phone was far out of reach. I remember watching the clouds pass overhead, thinking I would die out there, a slow, painful death. It was terrifying. I screamed for the guy to wake up. He eventually gained consciousness long enough to pass me his phone. I called 911, attempted to stop his bleeding, used some adrenaline super strength to move the tree off my leg and crawled out to the road. We both spent weeks in hospital. My leg was severely broken, and I was hypothermic. He broke his neck, arm, leg and got multiple skull fractures and brain bleeds but survived. This happened 2 years ago. It feels like it was just yesterday. When I was 16, I was on my way to take my SAT on a Saturday morning. I pulled up to a four-way stop on a quiet street and looked both directions. Glanced to my right and saw a car way down the road, didn't look for more than a second and thought I was good, since he had to stop at his stop sign. I entered the intersection and looked to my right again and the car was already at the intersection. He was going 55 miles per hour on a 25 miles per hour road. He was not stopping. Time slowed down as I realized. Oh, he's about to T-bone the side of my tiny pickup truck. So, I looked away from the window to keep my face safe from any potential flying shards of glass. I gripped the wheel and just hoped for the best. He flipped my truck. I rolled onto my side and nailed a telephone pole with the top of my truck. As I was lying there on my side, I was just expecting to be badly hurt and in shock, but amazingly, my worst injury was a scraped elbow. This was nearly 10 years ago, and even today I drive like a grandma when it comes to intersections. I'll wait some extra few seconds every time if I feel like a car is approaching too quickly. There have been times when a car was coming up quickly and my heart rate would skyrocket because I thought I was about to get hit again. I have never trusted another driver ever since that day, and being that defensive has never steered me wrong. On the bright side, the guy who hit me immediately called the police, then shoved his shirt through a crack in my door so I could cover myself while the cop broke the window and pulled me out. He broke several bones, admitted fault to the police the second they got there and personally apologized to my hysterical mother multiple times. As bad as I was after he hit me, at least he wasn't a bad person. I still took my SAT. My hand was shaking from adrenaline the entire time. I was fast asleep and was suddenly woken up by the sound of loud hums broken by giggling. I look over, and there's my husband, in some kind of trance, humming and giggling in bed. I shake him. No response. I turn on the light and he doesn't flinch, but he begins flapping his arms. He's not a drug user, but I had just gotten home the day before from a 2-week-long work trip and noticed he was acting really strangely and rhyming words when he talked. But now it honestly looked like he was high, and was completely unresponsive. I call 911, and the paramedics come. Over that time, he slowly emerges from it, and starts talking. They insist on taking him to the hospital. We spend several hours there, and over that time he begins freaking out at me for calling 911. He takes off his wedding ring, throws it in the garbage, tells me I'm a horrible person he never wants to see again. That's when the nurse sits me down, and tells me what's going on. Bipolar disorder, he's in deep mania, and is psychotic. They involuntarily admit him, and he spends the next few weeks coming down from it. In that time, I grieved as if I had watched him die. Watching your partner go completely psychotic is so heartbreaking. They're just totally gone. Their body is there, but they are not. It took me a long time to recover. He's now, after 2 years, stabilized on the right meds. He's able to hold down a job, he's back to his whole self, and we've talked everything through. It's a cruel disease, but treatable. Asking my parents to take me to the hospital and being dismissed by them. A few years ago, I ended falling suddenly and aggressively ill with what I now know was sepsis. I thought I just had a cold, but it wasn't going away. I was more afraid with each passing day and decided to go to urgent care. The labs the techs took from me alarmed them significantly, and they urged me to go to the hospital, so whatever I had was pretty severe. I was terrified, exhausted, and nearly delirious, but couldn't drive myself to the hospital. I asked my parents to take me, and they immediately became dismissive. I was blowing things out of proportion, and they decided I should wait until the next day to see my doctor. My dad told me I could drive myself to the hospital, but he wouldn't support me doing it. I spent that night just crying and staring at the ceiling. I knew I was dying, but my parents chose to dismiss my fear and concerns. I prayed to God to let me live through the night, and asked why my parents could do something like this and still sleep at night like nothing was wrong. I wanted the pain to end, and I had to beg them to take me to the doctor the next day. At the appointment, the nurse yelled at my mom for ignoring what urgent care said the day before and for waiting to take me somewhere to be seen. I will forever be thankful to that nurse. The doctor made his diagnosis and basically said I was 1 to 2 days away from death, and I needed to be hospitalized right now. This kicked off a nearly 1-month hospital stay that required me to get open heart surgery because the damage had been done. While in the hospital, I asked them why they didn't believe me. Why they neglected serious health issues time and time again. This wasn't the first time they dismissed something serious, whether it be weight or broken bones. They didn't have an answer for me. I guess me nearly dying in the hospital finally made them realize their mistakes. I know they're traumatized from the ordeal and have tried making it up to me. Sometimes I'm okay, and I can talk to them like nothing has changed, but I will never trust them again and I don't think I can forgive them. Sometimes the disdain and hatred I had for them while they let me suffer comes up, and I can't stand to even look at them. I've since moved out, and they noticed I don't come by to see them very frequently. I have PTSD from that night wondering if I would die while they waited to take me to the hospital, and on those days, I can't see them. I hope I can recover from that one day. At the age of 15, I had 2 metal rods and 14 steel screws surgically attached to my spine. It was a 12-level spinal fusion, which is easily the most painful experience of my life. At 21, I was working at a hospital when a patient began sliding off a bed. She weighed around 400 pounds and had one leg and was useless to help herself. On instinct, I dove in to catch her upper body. 1 steel rod and 1 screw snapped, along with the fusion. The breaks happened on 2 separate levels and left 2 sharp metal ends stabbing the tissues around my spine. The workman's comp doctor never looked at the x-rays and it was 2 full years before we discovered what happened, after 3 trips to the ER. The injury and resulting surgery left me with permanent damage, and I lost 80% of my work functions, meaning 80% of what I could do on the job, I couldn't anymore. That was 14 years ago. I'll always walk with a limp. I'll never do 95% of the things I really want to. Since COVID kicked my ass, it's difficult just to move boxes or mow the lawn at home, let alone find a full-time job. So, that would be my answer. And for those in the medical field, anything over 50 pounds simply isn't worth it. You could spend the next 80 years a crippled, depressed mess with more medical debt than you can keep track of. My dad had a stroke 3 years ago. He has aphasia as a result. Basically, he's lost 95% of his speech ability. He says apple when he means garbage, basement when he means garden. He has only called me by my mom's name since the stroke. In his head, though, the comprehension and knowledge are all there. He sounds like he's saying the right words, but only to himself. It's very frustrating. Same thing with writing, he'll write all the wrong letters, but it will look right only to him. He's still here, which is amazing, but he's completely changed now that he can almost never be understood verbally. Life has completely changed overnight for him and for those living with him. Now he doesn't talk much. He's really depressed, but what therapy can you get for someone who is nonverbal? We used to have deep conversations, now it sometimes takes 30 minutes to understand a single thought of his. The messed up part is he's still aware of all the right words in his head. It's just stuck there, no way to get out. There was a girl next door to my grandparents' house that I had the biggest crush on. Her name was Becca. We had known each other from the time I was really small. We were both coming into the ages of liking the opposite gender at the same time, and we had similar troubled childhoods. Sometime after holding hands, but before a first kiss, Becca gave me a ring. She took it from her grandpa and needed it back the next day. I was really happy. With excitement, I showed my mom the ring. She asked my grandparents to borrow their truck and told me to get in and make sure I brought the ring. I had no idea what was going on. We pulled up to the jewelry store, and she asked to see the ring. She went inside and came out about 20 minutes later. Then, we went to McDonald's. That was the first time I had eaten anything but pantry food in at least a year. She said the jewelry store needed to borrow that specific ring for a few weeks to clean it up. I asked what I was supposed to tell Becca, and she said to tell her that I had lost it. I never saw the ring again, and Becca never talked to me again. My father was in hospice dying from cancer. He had stopped eating and was barely communicative. We knew it was just a matter of days. Mom and I went to visit him every day for a few hours so he wouldn't be alone. One morning we get a call. Fearing the worst, I answered it, expecting them to let us know he had passed. My father was on the phone, and he sounded well. He even said he was hungry and asked for breakfast. He told me he was looking forward to our visit. I was stunned. I had all these emotions and thoughts. Maybe it was a miracle, and he was going to beat this. Hopped in the car and started driving over. I got another phone call. This time it was the hospice folks. He had just passed. The roller coaster of emotions from that morning haunted me. I was numb for a long time. There was a period where I thought maybe I hallucinated and never spoke with my dad that morning. To put my mind at ease, I met with the hospice nurse who was with my dad that morning. She explained this concept called terminal lucidity. She says it's not uncommon at all, and is usually a sign that someone will pass soon. That helped, but it still haunts me.